Well, we know that children definitely have different risks with respect to COVID. They're at much lower risk of having serious illness or of dying from the disease, which is very fortunate. But first of all, we know that some children do die of COVID-19 and get very ill, and we're not really sure about the long-term consequences of it. The other thing is that, although we did not think initially that schools were a source of spread, we saw in Australia that schools are a significant source of spread, particularly high schools. Teenagers are able to spread the disease. And so, when we open up, we'll actually have COVID in the country. We won't be able to keep to this elimination phase anymore once we open up after vaccination. And if you think about it, if the only people in the country who aren't vaccinated are children, they can both transmit it to others. So people who the vaccine hasn't been effective for, or people who weren't able to take the vaccine because, they have a transplant or something like that. So they can transmit to those people, or they could get sick themselves. So, opening up Australia before we've actually protected children probably isn't what we're going to be able to do.
Yeah. So if that's the case, let's look at these vaccine trials. How much more rigorous does a children's vaccine need to be?
Well, we know that children are at low risk, so we have to make sure the vaccines are very safe. Usually these vaccine trials don't repeat the huge trials that they did for adults, because what they're trying to do is to see whether the children get the same antibody response. And if they get the same response, their immune systems responding the same way adults are, you can assume they're going to have the same good effect that the adults did. But mainly what they're looking for is that antibody response, but also the safety. So both Pfizer and Moderna, those are the new kind of vaccines, the mRNA vaccines, have already completed trials of children over 12. So they've already recruited, and they're just in the phase of following them up, and they're going to analyze them. So we should have data for that soon. But Moderna is really the first to actually look at that younger children population, so from 6 months to 12 years old, and that's ongoing. It's going to recruit in the thousands. The one concern, though, is AstraZeneca, which is the main vaccine we're going to be using in Australia. They have a small study that they're looking at children in, so about 300 children from age 6 to 17, but that's only 300. So that's really not enough to really understand the side effects in that group. So we'll need more children who've been tested for AstraZeneca before really we can say it's safe to give out.
And that's an interesting point because, of course, AstraZeneca, the rollout of the vaccination program in many European countries is now being stopped. They are reviewing that. But do you think it undermines the confidence in AstraZeneca, which is going to be a significant part of our program?
Well, I mean, of course, everyone's concerned, and stopping the vaccination programs, especially in places where COVID-19 is common. People are dying and getting sick from COVID-19. I don't think necessarily makes all that much sense because the complications that have been happening are rare. So if you have a risk of dying of COVID-19 that's real, a very small risk of having a blood clot is kind of the benefit outweighs that risk. I'd say it's more an issue in Australia in terms of kind of really weighing that benefit and risk. We know that it's very uncommon, but it may be related to the vaccine, similar to the allergic reactions being related to the Pfizer vaccine. So I think what we need to know is we need to have more information, and we need to understand what the risks are so that people can be explained. The risks can be explained to people prior to their vaccination. But, millions of people have been vaccinated with AstraZeneca. This is a rare problem and may not even be related to the vaccine.
And when it comes to children, do you find more broadly with these kinds of vaccine programs, parents are reluctant to inoculate their children?
Well, I think that part of it depends on what the risks parents perceive their children to have of the disease. And so there may be some resistance to vaccinating for COVID-19, given the very low risk that children have. But if we really want kids to get back to normal, if we want kids to get back to school, if we want kids to be protected from this disease and to protect others, their teachers, their family, their grandparents, then I do think it's essential that we get parents on board, we get the kids vaccinated with what we know is the safest possible vaccine. Very, very important.
Great to talk, Nancy. Thanks so much.
Thank you.